Luck was the residue of perspiration. Jack Carr, true believer. Welcome everyone to Rosin Reads. My name is Nick, and today we're going to be looking at Book 2 in the Terminal List series, True Believer. Book 1 in this series, The Terminal List, is being adapted to an Amazon Prime series starring Chris Pratt. So really excited about that one. Hope they knock it out of the park so we can get more of these stories adapted to the screen. True Believer is written by Jack Carr. Jack Carr is a former U.S. Navy SEAL. It's interesting, he submits all his books to the DoD before he publishes them, and they redact some stuff. Basically, they just make sure he's not sharing any classified information. Now, as the reader, it gets a little annoying here and there because there are portions of the book that he leaves blacked out. He doesn't really edit it or revise it. So I suppose it's cool for the first one, but then book 2 and 3, it's like, come on, man, just, revise it or just publish it anyway, because as Carr explains in multiple interviews, that none of the stuff that he is writing in his book is super top secret knowledge. Like, all this stuff has been revealed on the internet before, so it's not like he's giving up tons of information. I do understand why he submits them though. He probably doesn't want to get sued, and I get that. But either revise it or just, I don't know, be an outlaw. So if you're not familiar with the first book in this series, I'll have a link to my first video on this, Terminal List, in the description below. And also, if you want to pick up this book, I'll have a link in the description below as well, and also a card up here for the first video too. So there's 4 books so far in the Terminal List series, and I think True Believer, this book, number 2, is by far my favorite. I think Carr steps up big time from the first installment, and he really knocks this one out of the park. More of a global scale to this one. You feel the threat is major. In all reality, I feel like this book could have been split into 2 books and then each book fleshed out. I really enjoyed Act 1 of this book, and I wish he didn't even go into Act 2 in this book. Not that Act 2 was bad, I thought Act 2 was great, but it just felt like it was 2 entirely different books. And I really wish he just continued on with Act 1, but we'll get into that in a little bit. First, I'll give you a summary on what this book is about. When a string of horrific terrorist attacks plagues the Western world during the holiday season, the broader markets fall into a tailspin. The attacks are being coordinated by a shadowy former Iraqi commando who has disappeared into Europe's underground. The U.S. government has an asset who can turn the Iraqi against his masters. James Reese, the most wanted domestic terrorist alive, after avenging the deaths of his family and team members, Reese emerges deep in the wilds of Mozambique, protected by the family of his estranged best friend and former SEAL team member. When a series of events uncovers his whereabouts, the CIA recruits him, using a presidential pardon for Reese and immunity for the friends who helped him in his mission of vengeance. Now a reluctant tool of the U.S. government, Reese travels the globe, targeting terrorist leaders and unraveling a geopolitical conspiracy that exposes a traitorous CIA officer and uncovers a sinister assassination plot with worldwide repercussions. As I said before the summary, I thought this book could have definitely been made into 2 separate books. Act 1 is really interesting, and you get a little bit of education on the African bush and kind of what's going on there. Carr does a decent job filling us in with some history of how the country of Mozambique kind of was formed. He also gives us the lay of the land on poaching efforts and anti-poaching efforts going on in the African bush, and I thought it was really cool. I thought he could have went further on that pathway. I thought it was a good kind of cool down from the first book, The Terminal List, and I think we could have spent a little bit more time with Reese on the African continent, and a whole story could have been written with anti-poaching efforts. There could have been an evil enemy behind it all that Reese has to take down. But his buddy from the CIA, Freddie Strang, comes calling, and that takes us to Act 2 of this book, which again is also great. It's a compelling story. Act 2 is phenomenal. There's a huge geopolitical conspiracy plot going on, and our man Reese has to go and save the day. I think the conspiracy plot in this story is very believable and is somewhat scary when you think about it. You hope no terrorist gets their hands on this book and reads some of these plots, because pretty serious stuff, pretty scary, and makes for a good read. I had a few frustrations with True Believer. One of them being, I get that the CIA has, many private jets, but they just fly back and forth from one place to another, on demand. Seems a little unbelievable, I guess, but like in a lot of these espionage type thrillers, you gotta let some things slide here and there. I also think that some of the bad guys can be fleshed out a little bit more in some of Carr's books. The bad henchman trope that beats hookers to death is I don't know. I feel like it could be a little bit more nuanced, and Carr could live a little bit more in the gray areas and give these henchmen more motivation than just straight money. But I suppose making a super bad guy or bad henchman that we feel nothing for, and we have nothing in common with this bad henchman, we don't feel so bad when Carr gets into his normal torture scene that seems to be a staple in every one of his books. When reading Carr's novels, you definitely have to have a stomach for violence. He doesn't hold back at all when it comes to the blood and the gore, which keeps a sense of realism to his books. And with any James Reese novel, you're gonna get excellent tactical descriptions. The action's gonna feel real. None of this run and gun stuff and diving around. Everything is very smart. The way Reese approaches every fight is thought out well. He knows what he's doing. And ultimately, when you're reading a Jack Carr novel, that's what really stands out. And that's what really makes James Reese a different protagonist from others in this genre. The realness of every action sequence and the tactics, the weapons, it all feels very real. Don't let my frustrations quell you from reading this book. It definitely is a page turner. It is nonstop action. It's very well written. It's just those few little things frustrate me a little bit, but nothing that I was willing to put this book down for. Great novel altogether, and my favorite in the series so far. This book is for anyone who's into espionage or spy thrillers, all those tactical gear nerds out there. And if you're a Jack Ryan fan, you'll definitely be a fan of James Reese. And if you want to pick up this book, check out the link in the description below. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm really excited to see this adapted to the screen. I think Chris Pratt can really make this role his own, and I hope the screenwriters maybe add a little bit more nuance to James Reese and some of the bad guys in these stories. There's a lot there, great base material to work with, and I hope they knock it out of the park so we can see more of these stories adapted in the years to come. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe and like this video. And that wraps things up. Thanks for watching.